Okay, so now that we have everything installed, we can take a look at Audacity. So let me just really show you really quickly around the interface a little bit. So I'm on a Mac, but it's going to be very similar in Windows. It's going to be very much the same, pretty much. But the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you're using the right input source, and you would do that right up here. So right now it tells me I'm using the built-in microphone. I'm going to recommend that any kind of voice recording that you do, you're going to use some sort of microphone, whether that is on a set of earbuds that have a mic that will work, or if it's a USB headset or something like that. But you need to try to do something that's going to be able to capture your voice if you're recording straight out of your computer. If you want to capture your voice in a way that is not picking up a bunch of ambient noise that's in the room. Another opportunity that you could, or another option, not opportunity, another option you could have would be if you don't have some sort of mic that you can use with a computer, then you can always do your recordings separately, like on your phone device through the audio recorder on your phone, save them as files, and then you can import them to Audacity. But right now I just want to show you how you can record straight into Audacity, because that might be the easiest thing to do if you're sitting at a computer and you want to do this recording. So I'm going to choose my headset, and then because this is just a mono recording device, most of you are just going to have a mono recording device, meaning that it records to one channel. And just so you understand the way that audio works is that if it's mono in a headset, it's going to go to the left speaker. So it means that you would only hear it in your left ear. And so the thing that's really confusing about audio sometimes is when you record something and you make it mono, originally, and you don't duplicate the channel into the right channel so that you hear it in both speakers, you might not realize that if you're listening to your playback through like your computer speaker, because your computer speaker just comes out of one resource, out of one source. And so it sounds maybe like it's a full sound, but if you were to wear a headset or if you had directional speakers, then it would come out of one side. So anyway, I want to make sure that's really clear, because sometimes people will record their stuff in mono, or they'll get a mono source and they never switch it, they never duplicate the channels, and then they do all this video editing with a mono source, and then they get it in a headset later and they're really frustrated because you only hear it coming out of one side, and then it's all got edits and stuff like that. So anyway, all right, and so for the playback, I'm also going to use I can use built-in output, or I can use my headset, whichever. So let's try that. Okay. And let's just get started with a recording. So I'm going to just show you some of the interface features as I need them. So the first set of recording would be up here, these control features, where I've got a pause, play, stop, back, forward, and then this record button. So if I hit record, it's just going to start recording my voice. So you can see that it's capturing my voice as I continue speaking, blah, 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 right? I'm going to hit stop, and then it stopped. And so what it did is it created this audio track. I could name this, and I could call this me talking blah, blah, right? I'm really not saying anything, so I'm just going to call that me talking blah, blah. And so I've got this mono channel now. Now, what I would probably want to do is, unless you want two different sounds coming out of the left speaker and the right versus the right speaker, which sometimes you might want to do if you wanted like an impact sound where it's like boom, 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 like out of different speakers, right? Then unless you want something like that, I would recommend that you just record everything in mono, you do most of your editing, and then you can duplicate the track at the end into stereo so that it is in both the left channel and the right channel before you output your file. If I were to do left and right channels right now, it means that I then take up more real estate on my my editing panel here, right? So let's just play that back. So you can see that it's capturing my voice as I continue. Okay, so that's just me talking. All right. And if I want to analyze this, then there's some different ways that I can look at it. But before we do that, I just thought of something. So if let's as a troubleshooting method, right? So like, let's say that you just tried to record yourself and there's nothing that's showing up here. It doesn't seem like it's working, or maybe it's not coming out of the right speakers, even though you've set it up properly here. So one thing that you might have to do on your system is you might have to go into your actual computer system preferences and set up the correct sources before this one will work. It depends on your system. So I'm on an Apple. If I go up to this Apple icon, I go to System Prefs, and then I click on sound, then I'd need to change my input, and you can see that it's picking up the input here, and you want to make sure that it picks up your input level down here whenever you choose the source that you want. If it doesn't pick that input level up, then something's wrong. All right, if you sit there and talk and this doesn't make these little bars go, then you've got a problem, right? And so maybe what you need to do is unplug your USB tethering device, or maybe you need to turn your Bluetooth on and off, depending on what kind of device you're using, and so on. So the other thing too is that you can change your input volume here. So if you turn it all the way up, then what's bound to happen at some point if you talk very loudly into the speaker is that you might get clipping up here. So once the bars start coming up really high in this area where I'm moving my mouse, then what can happen is the amplitude is so great that it might be beyond the ability of that particular microphone device to actually capture it, so it'll clip it like it's giving it a haircut. And then that's how you create distortion, and it sounds not good. So you want to make sure that you don't put your input so high that it gets way up high in this range in case something loud happens and then it clips it. So I usually keep my input somewhere in this range when I'm using a microphone. And you want to set your output to however you want to be listening to it. I recommend that if you have a headset, that you set your output to a headset. That way you'll know how it sounds in one ear when it comes out. Okay. If you're on Windows, you would go down in the bottom left corner, or excuse me, bottom right corner of your device, or you'd go into your control panel and you would look for your audio settings, and then go in there and you would set your audio input and output in your audio control panel for your speakers and for your mic. Okay. All right. So then you could come back here and make sure that this is set properly. I just wanted to show that as a troubleshooting method in case it wasn't working for you. And that's going to be true for a lot of other applications that you're using audio with, so including Audition and Logic, and we'll get into that later with those specific applications, but I do want you to remember, like, you generally have to set your audio input and output resource devices in both the system as well as the application. Usually Audition's pretty good about just using the application. Audacity, sometimes you have to use it, both the system and the application. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is like how you can analyze this, right? So the first thing is that I can take this magnifying tool, and if I want to zoom in to see this wavelength, or it's not wavelength, waveform better, then I can do that. And then you can just move around it as well. And if you hold down on this, it's not the option key. Like if you're used to using Adobe, you'd hold down the option key to zoom back out. But on Audacity, you hold down Shift and you see it turns into a little minus symbol, so you can zoom back out. So that's one way of zooming in and out. And then also you'll notice down at the bottom, whenever I hold this over my waveform, down at the bottom it says click to zoom in, shift click to zoom out, right? So it reminds you that you can do it that way too, all right? Down at the very bottom of the screen. Okay, so anyway, the other thing that then I might want to be able to do is go over here to this cursor, and then just like a Word document, I can select a portion of a waveform. And let's just say that I want to hear only that as a playback, and I can zoom in to kind of analyze that waveform and see what's happening, and I can play that. And you see right here, it's got the playback track playback head limited with these arrows in this section. So if I hit play, all right, this is my recorded voice that it's capturing, that it's capturing, that it's capturing. Okay, so that way you can isolate just a piece or a section. By the same token, you can take that cursor and you can also choose to cut a piece out. So let's say that I didn't like this gap right here. And I think I'm probably taking a little bit too much off. So if I zoom in a little bit more, see I'm getting a little bit of speaking material right there. So let's say that I just want this gap to go away. I could just hit the delete key and it's gone, just like editing in Microsoft Office products, you know, it's really not that different. So if I wanted to listen to that and make sure it doesn't sound weird, then I could just grab this section and play it, my voice. Okay, and then maybe that's not enough to actually figure it out. So I'm going to zoom back out and let's just play a larger sample. Let's see how that sounds. Capturing my voice as I continue. Capturing my voice as I continue. And see, that sounds a little unnatural actually, because it's saying capturing my voice, saying capturing my voice, capturing my, right? So maybe I don't like that. I'm just going to undo that with Command or Control Z if you're on Windows. And then now I can take this larger sample and listen to it, capturing my voice as I, right? And I think that that might sound a little bit better. Capturing my voice as I continue, all right? So it doesn't jam the words together. But the point is that you can just take a cursor and delete stuff, right? Especially like if there's a gap and then there's like a spike of really loud noise, like somebody drops a book in the background, or and you just want to get rid of it, you can literally just highlight it and delete it. Okay. All right, so those are some basics. And the other thing that I can do is I can shift. So you might, like, let's say that I want to record another track, and I want to overlap these. Now, what's going to happen if I just hit record right now? It's going to start recording at this place that is on. Like if I'm right here, it'll start recording at that place. Not on top of this track, like it won't overwrite it, but it'll create a new track, but it'll start recording registered at that location. The other thing about it is that it won't mute this, right? So it's going to, when I do playback, like whenever I start recording, it's actually going to play this. So here, let me just show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to hit record and start talking. Speaking, talking,
blah, blah, blah,
talking,
right?
talking. So what you're going to end up, all right, now I'm not recording, I'm just talking. But what happened, if I go back, is it was playing this existing track while I was talking on top of it. And the reason that that's useful is, let's say that you're a musician and you want to have that other sound playing so that you can hear it and also, you know, be playing with it. Like maybe you've got a drum beat and you want to start playing a guitar. Well, if I mute the drum beat, then I might be out of sync with the guitar playing, right? So it's sort of weirder when you've got voices. It's a little distracting, in fact. But let me just show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to just put my playback head right here and start playing. Speaking,
blah,
talking,
blah,
talking,
right?
talking, talking. Okay, that's kind of crazy. So but that is also a way, if you wanted to create like this cacophony of voices just talking, you could just sit there and record the tracks and you could make your own crazy, you know, like conversation that or just like the sound like of a crowded room or something. And what's nice is that you could go back and you could change the voices so that they didn't all sound like your voice. You could change them by adding some effects later, like changing the pitch or changing the speed, so that some of them sound like a male voice versus like a female voice or a child's voice or whatever. And so you can actually create this dialogue or this conversation if you wanted to, which is kind of interesting. So it doesn't always have to sound like your voice. You can also just get other people to talk too. That's okay. All right. One thing we haven't done so far is we haven't saved this file. So let's do that really quickly before we do anything else. All right, so if I go up here to File and I say Save Project, right? This is what's important, is that whenever you have Audacity file open like this, then what it is it's a project. Because what's happening behind the scenes that you don't realize is that every time you record a track, what it does is it creates a track recording file inside of a project folder, and then this file that we have open, this native Audacity file, which ends in AUP for Audacity project, it basically is like a little roadmap that shows all the editing and the markers and all of the way that these tracks are put together, right? So anyway, let's go up here, say file, and then we're going to say save project. And then it warns you, hey, this is for an entire Audacity project, not just an audio file. So like, for instance, right now, if all you were trying to do is output this file to like an MP3 or to an AAC file or something like that, or like a WAV file, then that's not what this is going to do. This is saving the audio file so that later you could open it up and start editing with it again. Anyway, and it's not going to open in other applications. If you wanted to create like a WAV file that would play on the web or something, then you would have to use the export feature. That's all this is saying. So anyway, that's fine. We're going to say okay to this, and it's going to say where do you want to save this. So let's say on the desktop, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'll call this. Actually, let's cancel this. I have an audio folder right here where I've already downloaded some files from the internet, and so I'm going to go inside of that. Let's just use that, and this is where I'll make my Audacity stuff. And now what I could do is I can make an Audacity folder right here if I wanted, or I can just save it right directly in here and it'll create a subfolder for me. So let's just call this let's call this demo. You can call it whatever you want. And then don't worry about giving it a file extension, it'll do that for you. And you can see down here where it says file type, it is going to make it with a file extension of .aup. So we'll save that. And so now if I were to close this, I've got the file right here. I could always go back and start editing again by opening this thing called demo.aup. And you'll see what it did here is that it created demo.aup, but it also created a folder called demo_data. And if you look inside of that, you'll see that it's got a way that it keeps track of the different recordings that you created. All right. Now, if you find this too confusing to be just sort of like thrown in here with everything else, then you could create something called Audacity files or something like that, right? And then you could take this AUP file and the demo or the data file, and you can just drag them in there so that you can see that these are your native files. You can also refer to those as working files. That's what I usually will do sometimes. Anyway, so if I can just double click that AUP file, and that opens right back up for me where we left off. And that's probably a pretty good place to stop for this lesson. And so in the next lessons, I'll show you some more stuff, including like on importing audio files and how to look at waveforms and maybe add some effects and things like that.